Hello, everyone. For sale today on eBay is a record player I've never seen before. It actually seems to be a fairly rare one. It's a Stanton Gyropoise 8005A. It's a pretty unique record player. It's all kind of a, I'm not sure what kind of steel it's made out of. It's not aluminum. It's sort of some sort of a polished steel. But the thing that's really interesting about this record player is it actually uses a relatively large magnet to make the whole platter levitate on there, and it also has the infamous Stanton 881S cartridge on here, which seems to be in pretty good shape. Here's the side shot of it with its little brush and everything. And do have one little issue with this. It's actually not a major concern. It has to do with the belt, and this one I've never actually seen one that works this way. But the switch for 33 to 45 actually moves a cog that slips the belt further down on the pulley on the motor. And the belt for this record player is actually an odd size, and I looked high and low all over the internet and wasn't able to find the right one. I actually went through about two different belts or three different belts before we found one that would work properly with it, and it's not exactly the right size either. And I'll show you in a minute what it's doing. It's actually not the end of the world, but I don't know that you're really going to be able to find the right belt. I do have the original belt that came with it, but it's stretched out so much it won't change speed, and it's sliding just a little bit. The belt that I have on there actually works much better, and it will let you change the speeds. But let me go ahead and just show real quick how this guy works. It does not auto return, but it does auto stop. It's actually fairly violent when it auto stops. There's a relay that shuts the power button off, and it just kicks the arm up, so it'll actually get to the end. And if you look right here, there's an adjuster to set where it stops. So it's a little interesting. That's manually adjustable, and you might have to adjust that after it ships because it could slide a little bit. It was off after I brought it home from picking it up, but it's already set on 33, and I've got a record on here, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on. I've got this guy plugged into a homemade preamp I put in a wine box, and it's just plugged into a single channel on a amplified speaker over here. So it's on lift right now. It's got a top over there. Set it on and hit play. I just want to show how this thing auto stops here at the end. Let it play a little bit at the beginning, but here I'm just going to play the end of the record and show it shut off. So, so you can see it just turns itself off and lifts the needle up. And if you try to turn it on right now, it'll actually fight you a little bit. So you've got to return the needle back to the beginning position here, and you can turn it back on. So another thing to note is when you first turn it on, since there's a magnet that's actually causing the platter to levitate, it jars a little bit. So be sure when you first turn it on, make sure it's on for a good 4 or 5 seconds before it starts, before you play it. Otherwise, the needle will jump around on the record. I learned that the first time I tried this, and you definitely don't want to do that. Sorry, I keep losing focus here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop for a minute. I'm going to take the platter off, and I'm going to show. Actually, let me first show you just what happens when you change the speed. You'll hear this sound a little bit. I'll go ahead and flip it. And you hear that noise, and it went away. And when you switch it back to 33, you'll hear it again. And usually it goes away on its own. Sometimes it won't, though. And what I've noticed is, for one, you need to have it on when you switch the speed. And the other thing you need to make sure is that if it doesn't switch properly, after you've switched it, just turn it off and then turn it right back on, and it'll settle down just fine. And let me go ahead and I'll switch it back to 45. You hear how it calmed down there after a second. I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to put a 45 record on for a second, and then I'll take the rubber off the platter and show you what's going on with the belt. Okay, I have a 45 on now, so I'm going to go ahead and set the needle in position and hit play here. So, you can see it's playing at 45 just fine. I'll go ahead and lift and put it towards the end here and show how it'll stop on these guys as well. Got closer that time. Yeah, just lifts up on its own. Just put the needle back, put it back on play. The other thing I've noticed is the locking mechanism for the arm here really doesn't work that well. You kind of have to scoot the needle over a little bit to get it to lock right, and I'm not a real big fan of that. When I ship this, I'll probably go ahead and do something a little different. But let me go ahead and take the record off here real quick. Here, I'm going to stop for a second and take the rubber off. Okay, now that I have it apart, it's a little difficult to see in here, but you can see there's the spindle, and this also the selector. And you can see the selector actually touches the belt. And what it does is it drags it up and down on the spindle from a smaller to a bigger pulley. And this is kind of the problem I ran into. The original belt seems to be right at 4 millimeters tall. I think it was 462 millimeters that the platter diameter was. And if you start looking for a belt of that diameter, you're not going to find the right thing. I wound up initially trying to do a shorter belt because I thought that would work better, but it wouldn't stay on the speed properly. That kept sliding off. So what I wound up doing was putting a 5 millimeter belt in there that's actually 462, and it's the right tension and everything for the platter. Everything works great. Unfortunately, it seems to drag on the speed change just a little bit. And I actually found one site on the internet that had the right belt for this, and when I ordered it, it was the wrong belt completely. It wasn't even close to the right size. It was way too big, way too thin, and way too short, and wouldn't actually work at all. So I wound up just measuring it manually, ordered a couple of different ones, and this one seems to be the closest one out there. You might play around and see if you can find something better, but I really don't know that you can. I'll go ahead and include the original belt as well so you can get the right height and thickness of it. It's obviously stretched out too far. I would have just left it in here, so this one's in here now. But let me go ahead and turn it on, and it's on 45 right now, and you'll have to see in this hole as it goes by, but I'm going to switch it, and you'll hear the sound. And you see it slow down. And now I'm going to turn it back off. Get back around to the spot. And you can see how the belt's actually at the top of the pulley now instead of at the bottom. So the speed changer does interact with the belt, which I've never seen a turntable that does that. It usually changes the motor speed or something like that, but this one does physically move the belt. It's actually a very, very simple record player in the eBay listing. You should have already seen probably the photos of the inside of the bottom of it. It's very clean. And I took some photos of the inside of the platter, but since I'm going ahead and doing the video here, I'll go ahead and take this off. I'll disconnect the belt real quick. Pull this up. Actually, let me turn off the amp over here. Jarring it around. So there's the belt, but as you can see, there's a big red magnet here and a big red magnet here. And that's kind of the crux of how this turntable seems to work, is that it actually levitates. The platter's really bouncy, and this whole mechanism in here bounces around pretty well. So you've got to make sure this record player is somewhere stable. If it gets bounced at all, the needle's going to jump all over the place. And there's the changing mechanism. Let me set the platter down over here. And you can see how that works. It actually slides the belt up and down on the spindle. So that's why it makes a little bit of a noise. I think even with the new belt, it would probably have dragged and made a little bit of noise anyway, just because it's going to physically hit the belt. But I found that if you don't change it while the speed's on, it doesn't change right, and you have to put it back and then change it anyway. So cleaned it up as best we could. This record player actually sounds really nice. Alright, so sorry, my phone died there. It cut out, but I'm going to go ahead and show one other thing real quick that I forgot to mention. You see these two screws right here. Since this whole mechanism bounces around pretty well, I think what was originally done is, here's the platter, the belt back on it. There's actually 2 screws in the platter that, if you look at the other side here, look like they originally had some mounting screws in there. It looks like those are standard number 6 screws. So I'm going to go ahead and just mount a couple of screws in there, and I'll put a piece of cardboard underneath the platter. And that should lock the whole mechanism in place so that the magnets don't bounce around and hit each other in shipping, and it should be nice and safe when it gets to you. One other thing I mentioned that will show up in the pictures is that the real damage to this, unfortunately, is on the top shell. There are some places where it looks like wires were touching it, so there's some scuffs and scratches, but the rest of the record player itself actually looks pretty good, and this camera keeps dropping out of focus, but when you see the pictures on eBay, it'll look a lot better. So anyway, I just want to give you a quick demo of how this record player worked. It's kind of a rare one. I don't think people see this one too much, so just wanted to give a quick demo and rundown of it. Thanks so much for watching, and have a good day.